Hi, I'm Nate.
Yeah.
This is my submission to the Andrew Huang for Producers One Sample Circuit Bent episode. In case you didn't know, this series has 4 producers and 1 sample, where 4 artists will create an original track featuring this sample from the Circuit Bent sample pack. The Circuit Bent sample pack and a few other packs on Andrew's website are going to support LA fire relief for affected musicians. So purchase those if you can. I'll play the whole 45-second sample so we know what we're working with, and then we'll dive in. So my first thought when hearing this sample is there's a lot of pops and clicks going on. So my first idea was to take one of these pops and use it as a convolution reverb. I use convolution in a couple different ways, but the first way was mainly for timbre. So I recorded this guitar line here. With Logic's native convolution reverb, Space Designer, you can actually just cut up a sample and drag it straight in, and it will become its own convolution reverb. Because this has a short tail, it kind of just gives it a nice bit crushy lo-fi sound. Then I double track that in left and right. To step up the convolution a bit, I took these 4 bars from the original sample and I left it unquantized to use as another convolution reverb on my voice. So I recorded these short vocal notes. And then, as you can see in Space Designer, this is the sample. And in Space Designer, you can also adjust the size of the impulse response. So I set this to 50% to kind of make a wild, bit crushy vocal chop sound. I did the same thing on 2 guitars, panned left and right, with this little plucked guitar arpeggio. And then I doubled that in left and right. And on the left one, I left the convolution reverb at 50%. And then on the right one, I scaled it back up to 100%. So as these plucked guitar clouds are moving along, the left one falls off, and then later the right one falls off. I also added shaper box to each of them as a volume automation for swell. So that whole thing sounds like this. Okay, we've got some noodly atmospheric stuff. Time to tie it together with some drums. I took the original sample and I didn't just want to cut it up, I wanted to spice it up a bit. So I ran it into the Chase Bliss Onward right here with my handy dandy Chase Bliss modular patch bay. Yay! Um, so I ran it out through the computer into Onward and then back into the computer. Here's some of the sounds I got running the full original sample file through Onward. I chopped all those sounds up from Onward and turned them into these drums. And just as a side note, I'm a sucker for metalcore style breakdown syncopation, where sometimes there's like a group of a couple 16 notes, 16 note rest, a couple more 16 notes rest, and then like a 16th note. That style of syncopation just looped over 2 measures. That's just like brain scratching to me. I love it. Then, just to reinforce the circuit bent sample groove, I added a couple splice samples, a kick, a snare, and a hi-hat type 16th note rhythm. And I pitched all of them to fit best tonally within the groove. Finally, I routed them all to this bus where I added Space Designer at 10% to represent a really tiny space, some EQ, the Soundtoys effect rack with decapitator and radiator, Baby Audio's iHeart NY for parallel compression, and K-Clip 3, my go-to transparent clipper. All of that was the body of the track, and now I'll go through some ornamentation, ear candy, and some synths. One thing I'm a huge fan of is mini dropouts. Instead of like an EDM style track where there's a huge build up and then it cuts out for a measure and then the drop comes in, blah, blah, blah. I think it's really fun to have a build up, but just cut out for a little quarter note. I did that here in the intro, and I kept saying go off just in my head when it was playing through. So I just recorded a voice memo of it, go off, and then I pitched it up with Waves vocal bender and added some reverb and EQ to it. And then in context, the mini dropout sounds like this. After the intro mini drop, we've got the section I've been calling the epic section. On top of those drums, convolved strings, and convolved voice we talked about earlier, there are a few layered synths, all of which are synth sounds from Baby Audio's Atoms, their physical modeling synth. I have 2 pads offset playing the same thing, left and right. I have these 2 sounds doubling the convolved voice. Finally, this sound playing really, really high notes. These are all also run into a bus with Soundtoys effect track again, shaper box for that swelling sound, and Soundtoys little plate. Next, I also had a bass Zoom recording session with my friend Zane. Yeah. I was able to chop up some of the bass licks he made and put them into the song. So the first one, I did a heavy edit and I left these little fills. So altogether, the synths and bass sound like this. Next, we have what I've been calling the open section. Some things fall out, and the acoustic guitar lets it sound a little bit more open. For this section, I added this sub bass line for foundation. In this section, the drums also have more of a straight hip-hop kind of feel. The hi-hat is going every 8th note, and then I found a sample in the original file that sounded pretty much just like a clap. All I had to do was add some EQ to it. I'll play the sub, the drums that are added, and the acoustic guitar. That choppy sound at the end there was Logic's remix effects tool. I just automated it on a master track. And when everything is going at the same time, it sounds wild. I'm stoked for you to hear it. This third section I've been calling the prog section, the basis for which is a bass line I made out of the circuit bend samples. I cut up and dragged one of the samples from the section. I added this metal wobble panner preset from Shaperbox. One of my favorite presets for making wubs. Usually I just turn the pan off so I can get some center channel wubs. So good. I ran that wub through some other Shaperbox presets and got these sounds. It's the prog section because I added some proggy syncopated guitars. I also got some proggy slap bass from Zane. Yeah. And altogether, the wub bass, the guitars, and slap bass sound like this. On to the outro. We've got a huge section of that onward audio that I showed earlier. We have 2 of the convolved voices, convolved guitar. Got those 2 swelling pads from the Atoms plugin. Have some more light rhythmic bass from Zayn just to fill it out. And we have some echoes from the last sound that just played. The outro is meant to be all of this chaotic proggy stuff just happened, and then we're diving into a calm soundscape. That's about it. There's some impacts and risers here and light green, but other than that, that's the song. Let's give it a listen. Woo! That's the track. Have you used any of those techniques before? Would you have done anything different with these samples? Did you submit for the Four Producers contest? Just want to say thanks for Andrew for putting this on. This was a ton of fun to put together. Yeah, let me know your thoughts below. Yeah.